The discipline of detachment. How feeling less makes you unbreakable. You've been told your whole life that emotions make you human, that crying is strength, that vulnerability builds connection, that expressing your heart is the way to be authentic. But here's the brutal truth Machiavelli whispered centuries ago, and what most people still can't stomach today: the more you feel, the easier you are to control. Emotion is the leash around your neck handed to the highest bidder. In relationships, it's the guilt that keeps you giving long after respect has left the room. In the workplace, it's the fear of rejection that makes you say yes to things you should have refused. Online, it's the envy triggered by someone else's highlight reel that pushes you to perform instead of progress. But when you start detaching, when you pull your feelings back like a general recalling troops, you begin to see the world not as a storm to survive, but as a system to navigate. Suddenly, every slight, every delay, every manipulation attempt isn't a reason to react. It's a move on a chessboard, and you become the one reading the board instead of being pushed across it. Detachment is not apathy. It's not coldness or cruelty. It's control. It's choosing when and how you feel instead of being jerked around by the emotions of others. It's the moment you hear someone raise their voice and realize you don't have to raise yours. You don't have to explain, justify, apologize, or match their energy. You can choose calm. You can choose silence. And think of your emotions like a currency. Most people spend theirs recklessly. They pour it into arguments that lead nowhere. They donate it to people who don't value it. They throw it at drama like it earns interest. But a wise man audits his emotions like a CEO audits a budget. Every feeling must justify itself. Is this anger fueling a boundary or just my ego? Is this guilt teaching me something, or is it being weaponized against me? If the emotion doesn't serve your mission, it's denied funding. This doesn't mean becoming numb. It means becoming selective. It means learning to breathe before reacting, to pause before responding, to say I'll consider that instead of I can't believe you said that. And it means building the kind of internal stillness that no crisis, no manipulation, and no drama can penetrate. Because here's what they don't tell you: people fear what they can't predict. When you stop reacting, you become unreadable. And unreadable is dangerous. It means your enemy doesn't know if they've won or lost. It means your silence becomes the most powerful statement in the room. And in a world that overshares, overreacts, and overexposes, restraint becomes a rare and magnetic form of power. When you master emotional detachment, you stop chasing validation and start commanding respect. You stop proving your worth and start preserving your energy. You become the one who speaks last, listens longest, and moves only when the time is right. And in doing so, you don't just control the room, you control your life. Guard the fortress. Why your emotions must be protected like a castle gate. Imagine your life as a fortress. High walls, watchtowers, drawbridges. Within those walls is your peace, your power, your clarity. And every day people try to get in, not always with swords, but with smiles, with guilt, with fear, with urgency. And the doors they use are your emotions. Every emotion is a window in that fortress. When you throw them wide open, hoping someone will understand your pain, validate your worth, or soothe your fear, you're inviting strangers into sacred ground. And that's when the thief climbs in. Quietly, without warning, taking what you didn't even know you were giving: your time, your confidence, your direction. You wake up one day exhausted, not because you've worked too hard, but because you've left every emotional window open. Someone guilted you into doing more than you should. Someone else manipulated you with praise followed by a favor. You were so busy managing the storm inside that you didn't see how others were charting your course. That ends now. Machiavelli would say this: a castle falls when its gates swing open at every cry. And in the modern world, those cries come through texts at midnight, demands at work, passive-aggressive remarks at dinner tables. Every one of them is testing your windows. Are you secure or are you leaking? You don't owe everyone access to your inner world. You don't have to explain every decision, justify every boundary, or defend every silence. The moment you start living like a guarded fortress, not paranoid but prepared, you start reclaiming the power that emotional openness often drains. This doesn't mean you become heartless. It means you become selective. You install shutters of logic, locks of discernment. You decide who gets in when and for how long. And you don't apologize for protecting the space you've built. Because peace is expensive, and boundaries are the walls that protect it. You see, most people live with their emotional doors unhinged. They're available to anyone at any time. And then they wonder why they're always drained, distracted, and disappointed. They confuse availability with connection. But true connection, real lasting, powerful connection, comes from strength, not from access. When you guard your fortress, people will say you've changed. They'll call you distant, cold, maybe even arrogant. Let them. The truth is, you're just no longer easy to manipulate. You no longer offer open windows to people who only visit when they need something. You've stopped giving out keys to guests who leave muddy footprints on your floors. And something amazing happens when you lock down your energy. People recalibrate. The ones who only came for comfort will vanish. The ones who respected your space will rise. And those who stay, they'll meet you on your level, not through pressure or panic, but with presence and respect. So train yourself to recognize emotional leaks. Notice how you feel after certain conversations. Reflect on where your time and attention went this week. Audit your fortress. And if you find windows left open, shut them. If a gate creaks open too easily, reinforce it. Your inner world is a sacred empire. Not everyone deserves a seat in its halls. Guard it like your life depends on it. Emotional budgeting. Why every feeling must justify its expense. You wouldn't run a company by giving every department unlimited spending. You wouldn't keep employees who produce nothing but demand constant attention. And yet most people live this way emotionally. They allow every passing feeling to drain energy, shape decisions, and hijack entire days without ever asking, is this worth the cost? If emotion is currency, then attention is your credit line, and most people are emotionally bankrupt without realizing it. Anger flares and they spend it on arguments that change nothing. Guilt arrives and they hand over time, favors, and peace just to escape the discomfort. Lust whispers and they mortgage their clarity, their values, even their futures for a moment of pleasure that leaves them overdrawn. This is emotional chaos disguised as authenticity. It feels honest because it's raw. It feels real because it burns. But honesty without discipline is ruin. And fire without control doesn't warm, it destroys. Machiavelli didn't say to feel nothing. He said to feel selectively. He warned leaders not to be ruled by their passions, but to use emotion as a tool, never a master. In the modern world, this translates to emotional auditing. Treat every emotion like a line item in your mental budget. When anger arrives, ask, will this buy justice or just more anger? If the answer is no, deny the expense. When guilt knocks, ask, is this leading to growth or just another apology loop? When desire tempts, ask, what's the long-term return? If the emotion doesn't pay, dividends, cut it. This isn't detachment out of coldness. It's discipline out of self-respect. You are not a sponge soaking in every drop of emotion from people, headlines, and history. You are the chief financial officer of your internal world. And if something bleeds your energy without producing clarity, connection, or progress, it gets fired. Think about how much you've already lost to uninvestigated emotion. How many decisions made in panic. How many yeses you gave because fear yelled louder than reason. How many nights spent reliving wounds because resentment had no audit limit. Now imagine what would change if you treated emotion with the same scrutiny you'd treat a financial investor touching your bank account. You'd get sharper, calmer, richer in time, clarity, and self-command. And yes, some people will accuse you of being distant. But what they really mean is, you're no longer emotionally available to be manipulated. They liked you better when you paid full price for guilt, when you gave your time on demand, when you felt bad, and that was enough to make you fold. But those days are over. Now, emotion earns its place. And only those feelings that move the mission forward get funded. This practice doesn't make you numb, it makes you free. Free from emotional debt, free from the chaos of reaction, free to feel the right things at the right time for the right reasons. And in that freedom, you gain something rare in today's world: leverage. Because the person who doesn't overspend emotionally is the one others come to when things fall apart. They see your steadiness, your calm, your refusal to panic. And in that stillness, they find leadership. So ask yourself starting today, is this emotion an asset or a liability? Then act like your peace depends on the answer. Silence is your superpower. How to reclaim focus in a world that profits from your distraction. In a world that's always yelling, the rarest sound is silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the silence that comes from someone who's mastered their mind. The kind of silence that can't be baited, that doesn't flinch, that holds power the way mountains hold storms without fear. You were born into a system that profits off your reaction. Every ping, every alert, every headline, every comment engineered to provoke. They want you clicking, scrolling, arguing, doubting. They want you stirred up, distracted, emotionally bloated. Because as long as you're reacting, you're not building. As long as you're triggered, you're not thinking. And as long as you're overstimulated, you're too tired to resist. Machiavelli wrote, "In exile, betrayed, abandoned, surrounded by chaos." And yet he produced wisdom that would outlast kings. Why? Because he learned how to win with silence. In modern terms, he didn't tweet, he didn't overshare, he didn't rage, he retreated, watched, planned, and then wrote the blueprint for power. Most people today are digital performers. They post pain for validation. They broadcast outrage like it's proof of character. But emotion on display is emotion for sale, and every time you sell a reaction, you buy a little less control. The solution isn't running from the world. It's mastering your presence in it. That begins with silence. Not passive silence, strategic silence. The kind that filters noise like a sniper, scopes his surroundings, watching for movement, never wasting a bullet. When you delay your reply, drama collapses under its own weight. When you don't answer the bait, manipulators panic. When you respond with measured calm, others recalibrate or disappear. Silence is not emptiness. It's intelligence. It's letting others talk themselves into weakness while you observe from a higher ground. Try it. The next time someone sends a passive-aggressive text, don't reply instantly. Breathe. The next time you're tagged in a controversy, don't defend, watch it burn. The next time someone demands an answer, say calmly, "I'll consider that." That phrase alone has rescued empires and ended wars. Silence is a filter. It reveals who's sincere and who was only there to provoke a show. It separates urgency from manipulation. Real respect doesn't need speed. It waits for clarity. The benefits compound. You start sleeping deeper because your mind isn't chasing 10 different threads. You focus better because your attention isn't being auctioned off to the highest emotional bidder. You begin to recognize patterns, how people fish with praise guilt or false emergencies. You become immune. And here's the most powerful part. Silence gives your words weight. When you finally do speak, people listen because they know it's not noise. It's not a reaction. It's a decision. That kind of presence is magnetic. It draws in allies, repels chaos, and establishes you as someone who moves with purpose. In a culture that celebrates shouting, choose to whisper. In a world of instant posts, choose intentional pauses. You don't owe everyone access to your mind. You don't owe every problem a response. And you don't need to attend every fight you're invited to. Let urgency starve. Let drama die without your fuel. Let noise crash into the walls of your silence and dissolve. Because when you choose silence deliberately, you stop being a puppet. You become the one holding the strings, and the world notices. Micro-discipline, macro-power. The daily rituals that build unshakable men. Discipline doesn't show up with a trumpet. It doesn't announce its arrival or ask for applause. It arrives in silence at 6 a.m. when the alarm hits and no one is watching. It shows up when the mind whispers, "Skip it," and the body moves anyway. Most people imagine strength as something dramatic, explosive success, perfect confidence, bulletproof charisma. But real power isn't found in the big moments. It's found in the quiet ones. The ones you don't post about. The ones no one claps for. Because the truth is, if you can't master the small decisions, the big ones will crush you. The man who trains himself in the dark will not tremble in daylight. This is where emotional discipline is born. Not in therapy, buzzwords, or social media quotes, but in the ordinary, repeatable acts of daily resistance. Cold showers, intermittent fasting, hour-long walks without music. These aren't hacks, they're rehearsals. They remind your nervous system that you are the one in charge. Take cold showers. Every cell in your body screams to escape. Your breath shortens, your muscles tighten, and for a few seconds the primal mind wants control. But you stay. You breathe through it. And in that decision, you're not just enduring discomfort, you're rewriting who's in command. Or consider delayed gratification, the 48-hour rule for purchases, the pause before replying to a provocative message, the refusal to feed midnight cravings. These are micro moments of power. You may not notice it, but every small no trains a deeper yes to your purpose. This is what separates reactive men from strategic ones. Reactive men are ruled by impulse. They chase pleasure, avoid pain, and call it living in the moment. But their moments own them. They wake up tired, distracted, regretful, and they blame life for being unfair. Strategic men build structure, not out of fear but out of vision. They know that freedom is not the absence of discipline, it's the result of it. You don't become free by doing whatever you feel like. You become free when your feelings submit to your mission. This mindset touches everything. The man who resists a craving builds the same muscle he'll use to resist emotional manipulation. The man who chooses a walk over scrolling is the same one who will choose purpose over distraction when it matters most. And what you practice daily, you become permanently. Think of your habits as bricks. Each decision is a stone placed in your internal architecture. Are you building a fortress or a prison? Because every compromise has a cost. And every repetition, good or bad, is carving your legacy in real time. It's not about perfection. You will slip. You'll miss the workout. You'll answer the text you should have ignored. That's not failure. That's feedback. The key is to never let a stumble become a spiral. Review, reset, repeat. Ask yourself each night, did I command my impulses or did they command me? Where did I lead? Where did I leak? What needs reinforcement tomorrow? This daily reflection is not optional, it's the steering wheel of your life. Because the man who doesn't review his behavior becomes a slave to it. Machiavelli understood this well. He didn't just observe politics, he practiced personal austerity. While others indulged, he wrote. While others postured, he planned. His legacy wasn't built on passion. It was built on restraint. And in today's world, flooded with temptation, distraction, emotional bait, restraint is rebellion. So let your discipline be sacred. Your rituals, your silence, your refusal to react, they are more than habits. They are armor. Each morning you don the uniform of the uncommon man. And every act of resistance, no matter how small, is proof that your kingdom answers to you. Detachment is leverage. Why the unavailable man commands the room. In a world obsessed with access where everyone shares, overshares, and lives on demand, detachment has become rare. And rarity, as Machiavelli would remind you, is leverage. Think about it. The people who beg for love, attention, and approval are always the ones with the least power. They're the ones refreshing texts, rehearsing replies, chasing deals, clinging to friendships that died years ago. Why? Because they're emotionally invested in outcomes they don't control. And emotional dependence is the surest path to manipulation. Detachment flips that script. When you're detached, not indifferent but grounded, you become dangerous. You don't chase because nothing owns you. You don't beg because your value isn't borrowed. You don't fold under pressure because your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's reaction. That's not coldness. That's control. In relationships, detachment is magnetic. While most men flood women with attention, over-explain their intentions, or rush into emotional exposure, the detached man is different. He's not aloof, he's selective. He doesn't play games, he plays by his rules. His silence isn't punishment, it's protection. And women feel it. Not as rejection, but as depth, as mystery, as something worth chasing. Because in a culture that floods women with options, the man who doesn't rush to prove himself stands out. He values himself too much to perform, too focused to chase. And that silence, the calm, unreadable stillness, creates intrigue. While others signal desperation, you signal discipline. In business, detachment is lethal. The man who negotiates without need controls the deal. Clients feel it, employers feel it, investors feel it. You're not scared to walk away because you've already calculated your walkaway number and you don't announce it. That tension, your silence, your calm, it shifts the dynamic. They lean in, they offer more. Because you're not trying to win the deal, you're deciding if it's worth your time. Emotionally detached men don't need applause, which means they're free to pursue results. They don't need to look right, which means they see clearly. And because they don't chase validation, they can tell the truth others won't. That truth becomes their value. That stillness becomes their brand. Even in conflict, detachment is your advantage. Where others lash out or sulk, you stay still. You observe patterns. You ignore noise. You only speak when facts require clarity. And when you do speak, your words cut through like a blade. Because in a room full of emotion, logic becomes a weapon. But here's the hard part. Detachment requires pain. You don't get it from reading books. You earn it by surviving manipulation. By waking up one day and realizing you gave too much to someone who never deserved it. By losing money, time, years, because you reacted instead of reflected. Detachment is born in the ashes of emotional chaos. And once you have it, you protect it like treasure. You'll start to see the shift. People who once controlled you with silence will fall apart when theirs no longer affects you. Guilt trips won't work. Tantrums will echo back unanswered. Urgency will bounce off your calm like waves crashing against rock. And you'll watch quietly as the world recalibrates. Suddenly, people speak more respectfully. They present problems, not drama. They step up or they step away. Either way, your peace remains untouched. Because detachment isn't distance, it's dominance. Not over others, but over yourself. When you control your reactions, you control the room. When you control your attention, you control the negotiation. When you control your needs, you control your destiny. So become rare. Detach from what's pulling you down. Withdraw from what makes you reactive. And in doing so, you'll gain what every man wants, but few achieve: leverage. Legacy over likes. Build a life that outlasts applause. You won't always be clapped for. There will be seasons when no one notices how hard you're working, how much you've sacrificed, how many battles you fought in silence. You'll build, and they'll scroll. You'll stand firm, and they'll mock. You'll speak the truth, and they'll call it arrogance. That's the cost of building a legacy based on principle, not popularity. But hear this: the man who lives by applause dies the moment it stops. You don't rise in this world by being liked. You rise by being aligned with your mission, with your values, with your inner code that doesn't change just because the algorithm does. Machiavelli understood that perception is power, but he also understood this: public favor is fleeting, but personal conviction is permanent. In today's culture, people are addicted to affirmation. Every photo, every quote, every post, a plea: validate me. But the applause is rented. It's conditional. One wrong step, and it turns to silence, or worse, cancellation. And the tragedy: most men spend their entire lives trying to win a crowd that doesn't even know their name. That's not power. That's slavery with a spotlight. Real legacy is different. Real legacy is carved, not clicked. It's built in late nights, lonely mornings, and principled refusals. It's forged in those moments when you could have chased comfort, but you chose character. When you could have said what was popular, but you spoke what was true. When you could have played the role, but you stayed real. That's what endures. Ask yourself, 10 years from now, would I still be proud of this choice if no one saw it? If the answer is no, it's not legacy, it's vanity. You see, applause fades, but skill compounds, discipline compounds, integrity compounds. The man who stacks these quietly without begging for recognition is the man they'll study later, not scroll past. The moment you stop performing for attention, you start building for eternity. In relationships, you stop chasing the people who only want your energy when it entertains them. You start choosing people who value your depth, your silence, your standards. In business, you stop jumping on trends that please the crowd and start solving problems that outlive them. In your craft, you stop creating for views and start creating from vision. Legacy isn't loud, It's layered. It's in the way you answer pressure with patience, the way you show up when no one's watching, the way you respond to betrayal not with bitterness, but with blueprint. It's not built in the spotlight, it's revealed by it. So let the world guess your next move. Let them gossip while you build. Let them mock the silence, not realizing it's where your empire is forming. Because here's what most people don't understand. Every no you say to a distraction is a yes to your destiny. Every moment you don't react is momentum for your mission. Every time you choose solitude over social validation, you're investing in clarity, and clarity outlasts chaos. Machiavelli's writings weren't popular in his lifetime, but they endured, because truth whispered with clarity lasts longer than noise shouted in fear. You don't need the crowd now. You need your code. And if that code is strong, your impact will speak when you no longer need to. So build quietly. Move intentionally. Speak rarely, but with weight. And remember, when applause dies down and the cameras turn away, your legacy remains. Because real kings don't chase claps. They build kingdoms. Feel selectively, live strategically, the hidden power of emotional precision. You were never meant to feel everything. Not every cry deserves your sympathy. Not every insult deserves your anger. Not every beautiful face deserves your vulnerability. The modern world sells you the lie that emotional openness equals strength. That being in tune with your feelings at all times is the path to wholeness. But here's the truth. Feeling everything is not strength. It's chaos. And chaos is easy to control from the outside. Emotional precision is what separates the common from the uncommon. It's what separates the man who reacts from the man who rules. Machiavelli didn't advocate for numbness, he advocated for control. He knew that people who feel too much are the easiest to manipulate. They cry on command, they rage on impulse, they trust too quickly, and they fall too often. Because when you hand your emotions to the world will gladly spend them for you. This is why you must learn to feel selectively. Not every emotion is worthy of airtime in your psyche. You must begin to treat your emotional world like an elite guest list invite, only those that serve your vision. When anger shows up, ask it for credentials. Will this emotion protect a boundary or just escalate a fight? When sadness lingers, question it. Is this grief serving healing, or is it stealing time? Every emotion should be vetted like a soldier at the gate. Most won't qualify, and those that do will work for you, not against you. This is not coldness. This is wisdom. The man who feels nothing is a stone, but the man who feels strategically, he's steel. He bends without breaking. He strikes with precision. He burns with purpose, not with drama. Think about the last time someone manipulated you emotionally. Maybe it was a partner who cried at the right moment, a boss who pressured you with urgency, a friend who guilt-tripped you with their silence. They weren't using facts. They were using your feelings against you. Now imagine how different that scenario would have been if your response had been, "I'll consider that." Not defensive, not aggressive, just still. In that silence, power is born. Because most people don't know what to do when their emotional bait doesn't get a bite. They panic, they push harder. But you observe, you filter, you wait. And in that waiting, you win. This isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about choosing what you express. There's a difference. Just because you feel pain doesn't mean you bleed in public. Just because you feel attraction doesn't mean you give away attention. Just because you feel pressure doesn't mean you abandon principle. The stronger your filters, the sharper your focus. And with sharp focus comes better decisions, stronger boundaries, and a life built on purpose, not performance. Look around you. Most people are exhausted not from work but from emotional exhaustion. They've given too much of themselves to people who never earned it. They've cried for validation, raged for attention, laughed to fit in, and they wonder why they feel empty. You weren't meant to be emotionally available to everyone. You were meant to feel what fuels you and discard the rest. So the next time a storm hits your chest, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this worth funding? If not, let it go. If yes, use it as fuel. But either way, you remain in control. Because that's the mark of a sovereign man. Not that he feels nothing, but that he never lets feelings choose for him. He chooses, always. Detached, but devoted. How strategic. Stillness transforms leadership, parenting, and creativity. Detachment isn't the enemy of love, leadership, or creativity. In fact, it's their most powerful ally. Because when emotion runs wild, everything becomes noise. Parenting becomes panic. Leadership becomes overreaction. Art becomes chaos. But when you learn to lead from clarity, not compulsion, you begin to move with intention. You speak less, but every word lands. You give more, but only from fullness. You create freely, but without bleeding. That's what detachment makes possible. Start with leadership. We've been trained to think great leaders are loud, emotional, charismatic. But the best leaders are rarely the loudest in the room. They're the calmest. The ones who pause before responding, who see through drama and act on principle, who let chaos swirl around them but never inside them. Because when you're detached, you no longer lead to be liked. You lead to be effective. You stop managing reactions and start managing direction. You don't flinch when the team panics. You absorb tension and return clarity. And the people you lead, they feel it. They may not understand your stillness at first, but over time they'll trust it more than any passionate speech. Now zoom into the home. Parenting through detachment doesn't mean you love your children less. It means you love them with structure, with discernment, with calm authority that refuses to bargain with tantrums or cave under pressure. Too many parents confuse emotional reactivity with connection. They yell when angry, give in when exhausted, and call it love. But children don't need emotional weather, they need emotional consistency. They need a parent whose no means no, even when it's uncomfortable. They need boundaries, not breakdowns. Detachment allows you to hug your child without letting their emotions dictate the household. It lets you discipline without guilt, guide without over-explaining, and love without losing yourself. That's not coldness. That's parenting with poise. And then there's creativity. The myth is that artists must feel everything all the time, that suffering fuels great work. But chaos may start the spark. It never finishes the masterpiece. The best creatives know how to filter. They bleed by choice, not accident. They draw inspiration from emotion, but carve it with discipline. When you're emotionally overexposed, your art becomes reactive, fragile, inconsistent. You create in bursts and crash in silence. But when you detach, you create from depth, not drama. Your silence becomes fertile. Your solitude becomes sacred. And your work becomes timeless, not trendy. Even personal growth accelerates under detachment. You stop chasing applause and start chasing improvement. You no longer need validation from coaches, partners, or peers to evolve. You do it because you've aligned yourself with something higher than momentary emotion. You've aligned with purpose. Think about it. How much of your energy is wasted trying to manage everyone's emotions, apologizing for your strength, explaining your decisions, softening your tone to avoid discomfort? That's not growth. That's emotional debt. Detachment erases the debt. It gives you permission to be principled without being perfect, to fail without shame, to speak truthfully without overcorrecting. It allows you to lead people, raise children, and build visions without crumbling under the weight of emotional noise. Because here's the truth: when you feel everything, you serve everyone and lose yourself. But when you feel strategically, you serve those who matter most with focus that multiplies. Detach not because you don't care, but because you care so deeply about what matters, you won't let anything lesser steal from it. Lead like a lighthouse, not a wave. Parent like a sculptor, not a sponge. Create like a craftsman, not a casualty. And grow like a mountain, slow, steady, immovable. That's the power of disciplined detachment. It doesn't make you less human. It makes you dangerously whole. From moment to empire, how inner mastery outlasts everything. Every empire that fell started with something small. A neglected wall, a delayed decision, a moment of hesitation that echoed through history. And every empire that endured, every legacy that outlived its maker, was built from within. It didn't begin with banners or battles. It began with discipline, with moments of clarity in the silence, with a single decision repeated until it became identity. Mastery doesn't happen in the spotlight. it starts when no one's watching. When you choose the cold shower instead of the comfort. When you hold your tongue instead of defending your ego. When you return to your plan even though no one's clapping. That's where it begins. Because the truth is, life doesn't throw you into chaos all at once. It tests you in inches. It starts with how you handle the morning. Before the world pitches a single emotion at you, you have a chance to script your own. Do you own your mornings, or do you surrender them? Do you scroll into someone else's world, or do you command your own? Most people don't lose control in major disasters. They lose it in micro decisions. They lose it the moment they stop choosing. The moment they become emotionally available to anyone with an opinion, a request, or a problem. But here's what Machiavelli would teach you. The man who rules himself even momentarily already rules more than most. If you can control one moment, you can control two. If you can control two, you can command a morning. And once you own your mornings, you start to own your days. And when you stack enough days without flinching, without folding, you start to own the season, the decade, the legacy. This is how inner empires are built. The storms still come. The betrayal still stings. The economy still crashes. But when the world shakes, you don't. Because you've rehearsed this moment in silence for years. You've practiced clarity under pressure. You've trained your peace like a weapon. So when others panic, you act. That's mastery. It's not perfection. It's presence. It's not control over everything. It's control over the right things. And in a world where everyone is trying to conquer something, money, followers, lovers, you choose to conquer the only thing that lasts, yourself. That's the foundation of freedom. You'll know you've built something real when the guilt ghosts whisper, "You've changed," and you reply, "No, I've optimized." When fear yells, "What if they leave?" and you whisper, "The door swings both ways." When temptation whispers, "Just this once," and you laugh because you've trained your instincts to respect your vision. That's the empire no one sees but everyone feels. Because when you've mastered yourself, people can sense it. In the way you walk, the way you listen, the way you refuse to flinch when others raise their voice. You become a storm-proof presence in a weather-worn world. And here's the quiet truth: mastery doesn't demand applause. It generates results. It doesn't show up in quotes, it shows up in how you live. It doesn't brag, it builds. So ask yourself not how you'll win the decade, but how you'll win the next 5 minutes. Then do that again and again, and watch what happens. Master the moment, master the day, master the season, master the century. Because the man who conquers himself is never truly conquered. Live like steel. Calm, clear, and unshakable. In a world that profits from your attention, emotional discipline is your greatest weapon. The core lesson. Don't feel nothing, feel selectively. You don't need to shut down your emotions to take control of your life. You just need to stop handing them out like coupons. Every time you overreact, chase validation, or explain yourself to someone who doesn't respect you, you bleed power. Instead, pause, observe, respond slowly. The strongest people aren't those who feel nothing. They're the ones who choose when and how to feel. They filter emotion through principle. They move with logic, not impulse. They know that calm doesn't mean passive, it means precise. Apply this now. Delay your response by 10 seconds the next time someone tries to provoke you. Turn off non-essential notifications for 24 hours. Watch your clarity return. Audit your emotions at the end of each day. What drained you? What fueled you? Whether you're a student, a father, a leader, or simply someone tired of being pulled in every direction, this mindset will change everything. You'll speak less, but say more. Do less, but mean more. And the world will feel your stillness before they hear your voice. Remember, mastery starts in the moment. Then it expands to the day, then the year, then the legacy. You don't need to control the world, just yourself. And once you do, you become the kind of man who can walk into chaos and not lose himself. That's real power.